and good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to present to you guys and tell you some tales about the 5 shades of DataFlow. It's going to be a not too deep dive session into technology. It's more kind of overview about all kind of technologies and products which Microsoft has, Microsoft Data Platform has in this area. So in the last couple of years, a lot of services, even on Azure or in the productivity cloud, came up with the tag DataFlow. And so I thought it's a nice story to embed it into the kind of movie which most of you, I think, know. So let's change this. So this was this is just to give you a little introduction to what services we are talking about, all kind of stuff. Just 2 words about me. Stefan Kirner. I think a lot of you will know me. I'm also a regional chapter leader of Karlsruhe of SQL Germany, and do a lot of talks at conferences, and I will also appreciate to meet you all live again at talks. So what are we gonna have a look at? These are the 5 shades of data flows. We will have a quick look, and the first one I think everybody knows, SQL Server Integration Services. Beneath the control flow, it has also a data flow. Then what I often talk about, the service is Azure Data Factory. It has now 2 kinds of data flows, the mapping data flow and the Wrangling data flow. We will look at both. And then on the Power Platform side, we have the Power BI data flows, and we have the Power Platform data flows, which are pretty new, I would say. So let's dive into of course, if you want to present something with data, you have to get a cool data set. I was searching a long time, and you could imagine it's much fun where you come out in the internet if you search for such data. But I found a funny site which discusses different materials of ropes. For doing stuff like it's also done in 50 shades of DataFlow, in 50 shades of the movie. And so here on the left side, we have the materials, the different kind of materials like nylon, like cotton, like sisal, which I absolutely don't know what it should be. And we have some criteria, some properties like popularity, roughness, supplement, knot holding, which could be very important depending on what you're going to do with such a material, with such a rope. So this is going to be our showcase, and we will do some funny things with this data in different kind of data flows. So the first one, SQL Server Integration Services. The data flow, I always divide between what is good, this is on the left hand, pleasure, and what is more kind of pain with the technology. So I would say at SQL Server Integration Services, it's very long in the game, since over 15 years, I would say. So it's very widespread in the world, and I mean, I think you get for any kind of data source, you get a kind of connector, or could program it by yourself or find some code, and you have a very broad community of developers who are able to work with this technology. And what's pretty cool, it runs also on premises and in the cloud and hybrid. you can use it in Azure Data Factory and run it all at any place. It also runs on Linux, so I think there is not too much reason to not use it if you think about infrastructure. And it has also a usable application lifecycle. It has a Visual Studio integration, and so you can do a build, and you can also use Azure DevOps to deploy it and all this stuff. So on the other hand, if you ever had to do with data which is more from the big data side, you can have problems when the data size is too big. It doesn't fit into the memory. It gets very, very slow. You also have problems if the data often changes, because it has its own metadata and usually breaks if you have changes in your source data, in your data sources. It's even a lot of pain to work with semi-structured data. So let's have a look at it. So this is our use case. This is our data, and we see a typical data flow. See, okay, we sourced all the data. It's in columns. And now we move to this data flow. What I use the most time in SQL Server integration services to do transformations is derived column. You have a lot of possible things you can do with the data, mathematical stuff and type changes. And here you have your columns and you have variables. And here you can do a lot of stuff. But you always have this data type, and you have to look that everything is all right if you want to join it with other data and this stuff. And this can get very complicated, even if you have source systems with tables with 300 columns, which are in CSV, and you want to integrate all of this. We all know, so you have a possibility to do stuff like conditional split. Here you say, okay, I'm only interested in ropes which are compatible with water bondage. This could be very important for some guys. And there you see, okay, now the data with has the property that it is not water bondage usable, goes to this point, goes to this flow, and the other one goes there this way. Here I do a sort to join it with a description. So you see you can also do joins. This is a left outer join. I'm sorry for the German version of Visual Studio. And then you can let it flow. So you see, okay, it's not a what you see is what you get, but you can work with this kind of data viewers. And then you also see the data flowing. So if you let it run, you see, okay, here the data comes in. You see all the properties and what's this doing with this, and we are at this point now, and then I can jump to the next point and I see, okay, it's getting filtered by this conditional split and it's much less data. Okay, and here we see this joint popularity. So you see you can give it a category. So, and like this, we will also look at the other technologies. So let's get further with the slides. The next one is one of my favorites in Azure Data Factory, the mapping data flow. So what's the cool things about it? The cool thing is it has a really intuitive graphical user interface. you're getting very fast into how to do things. It's my experience, even faster as in integration services, which is a pretty more technical tool. It also has, it's not only here playing with small and medium data, it also has all possibilities for scale out, because the runtime is Spark based. So you can partition your data loads and all this stuff. So it's very powerful. And I think it has a acceptable application lifecycle management, because you can let it point to a repository, and you have steps in Azure DevOps to deploy it to a production environment and all this stuff. So what's the pain? Okay, it has not that number of supported data sources like integration services, and it's still a newcomer, I would say. So if you have to pitch it to use it in your company, you will have a lot of people say, okay, is this really good? Is it really working? Is it really stable? But there are other technologies we will see which are even younger, and so this is pretty good. It has one cousin, I would say. It's the Azure Synapse data flows, mapping data flows. This is pretty the same technology, the same GUI, but it's integrated in Azure Synapse. And there you can also use Spark monitoring. So you can see what it's done when it's integrated to Scala. And this could be very good if you understand what Scala does and if you want to debug and all that stuff. So, okay, then let's jump to a demo. So, here we are in the data factory. You see there are pipelines, as we know, if you know data factory, and we have this data flows. And here we have our example, we have ropes. And as you see, you can see the data. This is pretty cool. You have a kind of data preview functionality. You also have this rope popularity. And you see, okay, it's more like integration. It's also like integration services, but it's really flowing. You can do joins here with different sources. So you see this data, and now also in the steps, you can do a data preview, what happened with the data after I did this transformation. And the transformations itself, it could be done. You have a lot of possibilities here. It's very similar in the naming to integration services, but even has some more components. And very powerful are these expressions. There's opening a kind of expression builder. So if you want to convert, you can do stuff like this here. You can also have a data preview in this expression builder, and you can search for stuff you could need like this. And I think what's very cool is that you always have those examples. So because this is a new kind of language here, expression language, it's pretty cool to have some examples what could be done. And here you see, okay, I converted this to a DCML, and there you see what's getting in, and there you see what's getting out. So also on this level, you can see at the moment you do this this step, you can see what's happening with the data. Here is a join step, and this is very helpful, even if you are a beginner, to know, okay, what kind of join is going to be done between the different streams and over which field. And you can also do transformations in this field and at this moment. And there you have this conditional split. It's very similar to what we've seen in integration services. And what's cool in this kind of stuff, you can also optimize. You can say, okay, this is gonna be done, worked over in Spark. So you can say, okay, how is the data gonna be partitioned? And it helps you very much to determine which is the best option to split the data and work over the data. So, and if you want to execute this in Data Factory, it's just another kind of action. So you always need a pipeline, and this you see here. You can reference it and then say, okay, how big should the machine be? And then you can say, okay, schedule this or trigger it now. And if you've done this, like I did before, because we only have 30 minutes, you can have a look. Okay, it was successful. And also what happened in there. So we have these ropes and how many partitions have been used and how long did this last, how long and what happened there. Where is this step coming from? So you can do a lot of debugging if something goes wrong, which is pretty cool, I think. Okay, let's go further. Next one. It's in the same tool. It's also in Azure Data Factory. It's the Wrangling DataFlow, but it's another kind of bringing the logic into the GUI. So it's based on the same technology like the Power BI, the query engine. It's based on M, but it executed in Spark, which is very interesting because you can do a real scale out and so work also with bigger masses of data or more complex stuff. So it's like mapping data flow. It has a acceptable application lifecycle management. You get the JSON and you have it in a repository if you like to. The pain is it's really very new, and so you don't have too much supported data sources. The interesting thing is it's converted from wrangling data flows to mapping data flows and then converted to Scala. You can imagine that this is could be kind of complex, and so it's still very young technology with some illnesses. Even it killed my demo before this session, and I clicked it together before during the opening session during the keynote. So you see, I don't use this at customers at that time. So, but let's have a look at it. How does this work? So here we are in the Wrangling data flow, and it really looks like the Power BI queries, but it has one difference. We have here our data set. It's the rope popularity and it's the ropes. And all this transformation stuff is done in M. Here's the M code, what's happening there. And what's pretty cool here, for any step, you have what you see is what you get automatically. At Ignite, it was promoted that there will be another kind of view for it, where you see it in a kind of transformation, what's happening. What I discovered is also we have the schema view now, where you can work faster with it because what you see is what you get is not used every time. So, and here we can do stuff with data. Hello.
You're back again. You were
okay.
Broken for a second.
Sorry. Okay. And then you see this here user query. What's this? It's just if you create such a Wrangling data flow, you always have to set, okay, where's the data coming from, the source, and then you can also give it a, you also have to give it a destination where it is really persisted. And this user query, it has to be the, it has to be named like user query. This is really pointing to what you want there. So here it's ropes, and it really writes the data to this destination. And you also have to use a pipeline to schedule it or to trigger it. So, and this is then converted to a kind of so this is converted to a mapping data flow. You see this if you go into this. And then you also have the possibilities to debug and do all this stuff. Okay, let's go further. If you have any questions, please ask, because this is always a problem at this remote conferencing, talking and okay, are you still there? Okay, let's go to the next one. Power BI data flows. It's longer at the market. I would say it's Power Query, like you all know it from Power BI Desktop, but it's only Power Query in this step, and it's server based. So you put this code to powerbi.com, and there it's running, and you can combine it with others and use it with Power BI Desktop to connect to it to other and combine it in different data sets, which is a very interesting option and is often used on the market. I also did some projects with it. So what's cool, as if you know Power BI, it has many supported data sources, and many are added all the time. We have in Power BI, I think we have about 30 or 40 new features any month, and so you also have a lot of options which data to use. As we've seen it, it's also based on this M technology, and with the what you see is what you get preview. Could be pretty cool because you always see what's happening when I do this step with the data and all this stuff. But on the other hand, it can last very long if you have a lot of data, and if your data source is pretty slow. So it doesn't only has advantages, but it also has an acceptable application lifecycle, because if you created a Power BI data flow, you can export it to a JSON definition and then put it to a production environment or a test environment, or you it's not included as today into the deployment possibilities in powerbi.com in the premium edition, but I'm sure this will come in a short time if it hasn't happened. So and what you can do is if you go to the premium levels of Power BI, you can do a kind of scale up and have bigger machines behind your data flows. So, but you don't have a scale out because it's more kind of in-memory technology. And you have limited persistence options. You can say, okay, I want to have this data in a database or on a data lake. You can have it on a data lake, but every time it's overwritten. It's you can do a lot with it, but it's not the best way maybe to fill a data warehouse. So let's have a look at that. So you know that guy. So here we are in powerbi.com, and we have a typical data flow. You go there, and now it's pretty similar to what we've seen before. You have this popularity. You say, okay, it's grabbing the data. You also see what's going on there on this machine in the background. And there you see the other steps we have. So we have to look at the time. So let's fastly go to the last of the 5 ones. It's the Power Platform DataFlow. And I think it's just 1 year old since it has been coming to the market. It is pretty the same like Power BI data flows, but it has one point which make it unique. You can write common data services, which is a service on the Power Platform, which has a very broad support for all kind of Power Apps and Dynamics, and also should be a standard for SAP and other vendors are going to be working with the common data model, and one implementation of the common data model are the common data services, which is a kind of database service. And if you want to work with this data, it's very cool if you have a way to write data into this service. The problem there is it has also no scale out and it has no scale up, as I know. It has also limited persistence options. You can use it in common data services and you can use it without. You can write to a data lake if you want to this. And what I really didn't like when I used it in a project, it had a pretty difficult application lifecycle because you don't get the JSON, you don't get the definition. It could be some way deploying it using solutions, but I couldn't work it out in the short time. So, but let's have a look how this looks. So there are 2 kinds. We are here in Power Apps. You see make powerapps.com. There are 2 types of data flows in this way of data flows. Analytical, it's just the same like in Power BI data flows, and you have the standard type, and we will have a look in the standard type. So there you see, okay, it's all the same like before. If we go to this advanced editor, it's the same code here too, but then we have this next button, and then it comes to the mapping to the common data system, and in the common data system there are entities of the common data model. So you can say, okay, I have my source data, my ropes and all this stuff, and I want to map it to a standard entity. The common data system doesn't have a standard entity for ropes. I don't know why, or its popularity. Okay, I make my own table in this common data model. And here you can say, okay, I define a primary key, and then you can do things like give it a longer persistence, even delete rows which don't exist in the source anymore, which is pretty unique. Yeah, you can use it. So this is another cool option you have. And it's also possible, of course, to schedule the stuff and see all this. Okay. So this is pretty the final slide. So I just tried to give it a an overview how this is how the technology is behind all those 5 data shades of data flows. If you go from the left to the right, we see integration services, which is stored as XML. When you use the editor, you can, and then it's executed, I think, in an proprietary in-memory SMTP architecture. This is also the stuff in the next quarter. All this stuff works with Power BI data flows, Power Platform data flows, Wrangling data flows. But as you see on the left hand, we have this Power BI data flows and Power Platform data flows. They are also executed in an, I think, SMP environment in memory. And on the right hand, you see used in a scale-out architecture using Databricks Spark. I think if we think about Azure Synapse mapping data flows, it's even executed another kind of Spark implementation as Databricks meanwhile. So, okay. Good. Oh, the Zionist team. I think we cannot support you much more with all this 50 Shades stuff, but maybe we can help you with your data to get value out of your data. Please have a look at our website if you are interested. And so I thank all the sponsors, and I thank Erik, and I think we are finished. Are there any questions at this time?